Tubi, the free streaming service, is full of weird movies, hidden gems, forgotten classics, and some things that are simply WTF, but it's all free with occasional advertising. Sometimes the movies on the platform aren't in the highest definition, but you can sort through them and find watchable stuff. At its best, Tubi is as close as you're going to get to browsing a video rental store in 1995. I dipped into the Tubi Palace this morning and found a whole bunch of interesting movie documentaries that are available at the moment. So here are a bunch of them you might like. I've already done a video on the channel about the Cinema of Exploitation auteur Larry Cohen. This definitive documentary about the man and his work is a high recommendation from me. From his TV work on Branded and the Invaders, through the quirky take on race in Bone, blaxploitation movies Black Caesar and Hell Up in Harlem, and subtly didactic movies like The Stuff and the It's Alive trilogy and The Ambulance. It's all here, and King Cohen includes long discussions with the man himself before his death in 2019. You get clips from his movies and television work, and interviews with Robert Forster, Joe Dante, Mick Garris, Barbara Carrera, Rick Baker, and Eric Bogosian, amongst others. This is the definitive work on Cohen's life and career. If you like cult movies and exploitation films, you've got to see this one. Ted Newsom's television documentary is 2.5 hours on the history of Hammer Studios. Narrated by Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, this is another must-see for cult film buffs. It's filmed in television ratio, so you've got the 3:2 aspect ratio, but apart from that, I can't find a fault with this. There are lots of clips, lots of information, and interviews with the talent who made the studio the wonderful source of quirky cinema that it was. One of the nice bits about this one is it does give some love to the other Hammer films that weren't in the horror genre. Coverage of those films is sadly lacking from so many other sources. This 42-minute TV doco is about the history of dinosaurs in Hollywood, and it's basic but a bit of fun. Narrated by an actor who worked with more than one dinosaur in his day, Doug Mcclure. It covers everything from Gertie the dinosaur to the 1980s. There are interviews with Jim Danforth, Donald F. Glutt, and Forry Ackerman. It was cheap programming for the TV back in the day, but it's an honest little piece of work, and watching Doug Mcclure awkwardly reading cue cards is part of its quaint charm. In the late 1960s and 1970s, this was a thing. Sexually explicit and kinky exploitation movies with a Nazi concentration camp theme. From basic flicks like Love Camp 7 and the Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS series, like Liliana Cavani's The Night Porter and Bertolucci's The Conformist. This documentary by Naomi Holwell examines how the USA and Italy each approached this very delicate subject differently. In the USA it was pure sexploitation, but in Italy it started out as an examination of that nation's complicitness in the Third Reich and fascism in general in the 30s and 40s. And then the Italian industry decided that the American films were making big dollar, and so they followed up and went further in the sexualization and sadomasochism of this kind of movie. The documentary is explicit, so don't dive into it when the kiddies can see the 65-inch 4K screen, but it's a solid examination of a subgenre that many other filmmakers wouldn't touch. It's well researched, well made, and like it or not, Nazisploitation is a part of cinema history. Federico Caddeo's Italian-language documentary on Giallo films is the definitive look at this short-lived but intensely creative subgenre of crime. Actors, directors and screenwriters tell the story of Giallo and the society that produced it. And in case you don't know, the name Giallo comes from the yellow covers of crime novels produced by a company called Mondadori from 1929 onwards. Caddeo rightfully acknowledges the precursor of Giallo movies, film noir and the German crimi movies made by the Danish studio Rialto Films. They get a mention as being instrumental in inspiring filmmakers like Mario Bava, Dario Argento, Lucio Fulci, Sergio Martino and Umberto Lenzi to make these colourful, violent murder films full of black-clad, unseen serial killers, elaborate murders, beautiful doomed women, and eye-poppingly enhanced colour palettes. This is an intelligent and fascinating look at the genre, and anybody who wants to understand world cinema better should check it out. Mondo movies started as an Italian documentary phenomenon in the early 1960s, with Mondo Cane in 1962. They were titillating, globe-trotting, and not always factual, but Mondo movies showed the weird aspects of human societies and of animal behaviour. They were not always respectful to the cultures they were portraying, but they nonetheless expanded the audience's knowledge, if not acceptance, of human diversity. Roberto Bianchi Madero's Mondo Balordo from 1964 has a few virtues. It's wryly and wittily narrated by an off-screen Boris Karloff, and it looks with a refreshing lack of disdain at transvestite nightclubs and lesbian bars, boating gigolos on the Isle of Capri, unusual marriage rituals, sewage traditions in poor Italian villages, Hong Kong strippers, and Roman picnics. It's not culturally sensitive at all, but for 1960s audiences, it showed the world in a way that television documentaries never went. Like all Mondo movies of the era, some bits were staged, but in general, seeing the 1960s world without the shine Hollywood put on it is kind of interesting. Tubi has another Mondo movie on its list at the moment, Women of the World, narrated by Peter Ustinov. But that one is even more cringeworthy and a bit more than a little bit sexist. But have a bit of fun deep diving into Tubi. Whatever you like, there's going to be something there. If you want paranoid Christian science fiction films about COVID-19, you can find them. You can find documentaries about UFOs and Bigfoot and all sorts of other things that don't exist. Or you can just watch a whole bunch of old westerns and groove on that. Whatever you like, there's going to be something there, and horror movies are more than adequately catered for as well. There are a bunch of documentaries that I haven't mentioned, including Sickies Making Films from 2019, Blood on the Reel from 2016, The World of Ted V. Michaels from 2008, and Survival of the Film Freaks from 2019. Yeah, I haven't watched those ones yet, but I've got them on my list, and I probably will check them out a little bit later. So there's plenty of stuff to keep you busy there if you're so inclined. Anyway, thanks for watching. As always, please consider subscribing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. You can support the channel at patreon.com/paleocinema. And please, look after yourselves. Watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some movie docos that you haven't thought about watching. And I'll catch you next time.